Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and I am here all by my lonesome once again. Myself and Brian couldn't get on the same page. Sob, sob, tear, tear. It's okay. He will be back. We're going to finish knocking out the AFC North depth charts, but I wanted to discuss something that was just getting underneath my skin. Just over the weekend, I mean, it broke before the week. I could have talked about it on the last podcast rather than rant on Le'Veon Bell. I don't want to seem late to the party here, but I literally tweeted out a couple of days ago. I said, for Pete's sake, who cares what petty stuff is being said by a bitter former Steeler? I swear, anything to get the clicks. Hashtag James Harrison, hashtag Mike Tomlin, hashtag Nothing Burger, hashtag clickbait, hashtag slow off season, hashtag lots of hashtags. For those of you who follow me at Joe_Kuzma, my personal Twitter account, maybe you'll understand where I come from if your timeline, if you're in a bunch of Steelers groups, follow a bunch of Steelers pages, maybe that's Facebook, Twitter, you follow a bunch of different Steelers pages, writers, people who just talk about it, team things, fans, whatever it be. You could not go anywhere. I still couldn't go anywhere Sunday evening on the internet without seeing something about James Harrison and his comments about Mike Tomlin in a recent interview. And I wasn't even going to bring up his name because it makes me sound like a hypocrite. But a few days later, you know what? Now I'm not jumping in front of everybody and trying to get everyone to visit the SteelCityUnderground.com website, okay? And there are people who get paid to share these links and things of that nature too. That's why I see like one specific person share the same thing in 12 different groups that I'm in. It was just blowing my mind more or less. The thing that drives me crazy, I mean, it's not that what Harrison said. I mean, is it really not common knowledge that Bill Belichick is the best coach in the NFL right now? As much as it pains anybody to say anything from Pittsburgh about the New England Patriots, their coach, Tom Brady or whatever, nobody has done what they've done, and it's probably never going to happen again, at least not in any time in the immediate future, what they have been able to put together and accomplish. But that doesn't necessarily bring down what somebody like Mike Tomlin has accomplished with the Pittsburgh Steelers or what Ben Roethlisberger, who I feel is incredibly underrated, has accomplished. And so this is going to be more of a Mike Tomlin-esque rant because I can't believe some of the things that some people have said just because, I mean, number one, James Harrison leaves the Pittsburgh Steelers in December. He plays a Week 17 game where he gets a couple of sacks because the Patriots are actually resting the guys who've gotten them to the top seed in the AFC. So they're using this old man that they picked up off the waiver wire. They're using him to rest their stars and their starters because he didn't do anything in the postseason. He didn't even get a sack. Okay? Go back and look it up. I had this rant earlier in the year because it was just annoying me how everyone thinks that Bill Belichick gets somebody and he makes them into an all-pro. James Harrison is now retired after playing 4 games. Yes, 4 games, not necessarily in their entirety either. And yes, a Week 17 game against a Jets team that was just a hair better than the Cleveland Browns were last year with Bryce Petty as their starting quarterback. James Harrison gets 2 sacks in that game. Disappears pretty much everywhere else. He got a little bit of pressure on Blake Bortles. You heard the announcers, everybody was like making this big story about him because he's this old guy that's still playing football. Geez, that's a great story. We peddled that one out there too, but guess what? He was also disgruntled that he wasn't playing. But then he says Mike Tomlin plays favorites. This is what he says. Says Bill Belichick's better. You know, he was there a month. He had, I think Dunkin' Donuts is based in that New England area, their headquarters, right? I think Boston, maybe. He had a couple Dunkin' Donuts coffees in New England, and then he was done. He was in Cincinnati longer than he was with the New England Patriots. Does he have anything else to say about Marvin Lewis, maybe? I mean, I guess it's because the question was posed of him. And seeing as this is always a thing to throw Mike Tomlin in the mud and then back the bus over him too, I gotta wonder if people would have done the same thing I always say that the Yinzers that are out there, that is the Steelers fans who will complain and cry about anything connected to the team. If it's negative, they're just throwing some gasoline on their torches just to keep them lighted a little bit longer, a little bit hotter. They're just waiting to skewer somebody with their pitchfork, right? These Yinzers, I wonder if we didn't have Facebook and Twitter and all this social media, I kind of wonder, and I was much younger, so this, may have gone over my head, but I don't think Bill Cowher ever had the same, quote, constructive criticism directed in his way as much Mike Tomlin. And let me tell you, if you think Mike Tomlin's a failure right now, I'm going to give you a bazillion reasons why he's not. I'll tell you a few of them. I already mentioned Marvin Lewis. What's he ever done? Jason Garrett. Are these the guys that you would want? Would you be okay with not being in the postseason for 3 or 4 seasons? They'd have maybe one shot here or there. Dallas Cowboys have fallen from grace. And it's a shame that they defeated, Bill Cowher and the Steelers back, what was that, Super Bowl 30, I believe. They used the Roman numerals. It always confuses me. 3 X's, I think. You don't want to call it triple X. Super Bowl. Probably not. Roger Goodell will find me right now. Anyways, but, a lot of people, the criticism is Bill Cowher didn't have a quarterback. And yes, Brian, I shall not name he who shall not be named on this show. I will do you a solid, even in spirit. But you know what? Bill Cowher didn't do anything until he had Ben Roethlisberger. Okay? He won one with Ben Roethlisberger. So if you're going to say Mike Tomlin wins because he has Ben Roethlisberger, well, guess what? Mike McCarthy wins because he has Aaron Rodgers. Tony Dungy won games because he had Peyton Manning. Oh, who else can we throw out here? Pete Carroll wins because he had or has Russell Wilson. Sound like a pattern? I'm pretty sure Bill Belichick wins because he has Tom Brady too. He didn't do so hot when he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Do we forget about that? And, they were doing okay. He took over the reins for the big tuna, Bill Parcells. I'm going to mention here in a few moments, too, because it's part of that conversation. And they had Drew Bledsoe as their quarterback. If that guy doesn't get hurt, I wonder if Bill Belichick's still coaching in this league and the Patriots have, 5 Super Bowls that Belichick's gotten with Tom Brady, a 6th-round draft pick who may have not gotten a chance to even throw a football if it weren't for the circumstances. Hey, sometimes you got to get lucky, okay? We know that. Look at Antonio Brown. I think I made a similar comment, too. If maybe Manny Sanders wasn't banged up as much as he was the first 2 or 3 years he was in the league. I don't know that AB gets the same opportunities either, but, hey, when that door opens, you walk through it. You know what I mean? And this is where I'm at with Mike Tomlin. I think we're just, as Steelers fans, spoiled. And maybe people outside of Pittsburgh, someone that's not a Steelers fan that would listen to this, may not be clued in to just how successful Mike Tomlin has been. There's always going to be that argument that he took over Cowher's team. Well, the last year Cowher coached, what did he do? 8-8 maybe? Wasn't in the playoffs. Mike Tomlin didn't take the team straight to the Super Bowl. That first year he was the head coach. I believe that was the Jacksonville loss. Very similar. I hate saying the word Jacksonville at this moment, but, that still stings. That's still the most current one. That's the thing that makes people, they think you should just walk all over the Jaguars or whatever. Let's totally disregard that Ryan Shazier had a spinal cord injury, a Pro Bowl potential all-pro player, and then his backup also hurt, Dirty Red Tyler Matakevich, and you got to replace both of these guys with someone off the street who wasn't playing pro football at all, that was cut by a Colts team that had one of the worst defenses in the league. So you got to think if you have one of the worst units in professional football and you're a player who couldn't stay on that roster, it doesn't really speak volumes in terms of your talent. Now, there's always politics and other mitigating circumstances, I understand. But I was just trying to paint this picture as far as that goes because people, I get it, you're upset. I was there. I think I threw up and it froze at Heinz Field, not from drinking too much, just from how gross that game was. Bill Belichick would have never lost a game like that. Well, Bill Belichick, I know, almost. I put my head down very sadly because the Jaguars should have pulled that off too, and they didn't. And that's the kind of things that happen. You know what I mean? But there's no taking away what Bill Belichick's done. If a former player who's upset about not playing his final year of football and doing everything in his power to sleep through meetings and whatever the circumstances were that finally saw him get released and end up in New England, wants to say that playing for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, being around the New England organization, wants to say Bill Belichick's a better coach. I haven't been to any practices of the New England Patriots. I'm not materially part of that organization whatsoever. And I could tell you that Bill Belichick is a better coach just on paper. That much is the obvious. I mean, I know Harrison said that Mike Tomlin plays favorites. I think he played favorites with James Harrison, too, when he didn't have to do all of these grueling workouts during training camp. And, he gets to sit and watch during the preseason. If you're a star, you're probably earning a lot of money. You're probably very valuable. And you've earned the right for certain things. I mean, we talk about Le'Veon Bell a lot. And, he was a second-round draft pick, a higher draft pick. But he got in trouble early on. We all know the story. But look at the other guy that was part of that, LeGarrette Blount. And the Steelers had some patience with him until he decided he was going to pout, and they kicked him out. And they've kicked other guys out for various reasons over the years. There are some guys that are stars, and they're going to get certain privileges. And there are some guys who are not stars that aren't going to get any privilege whatsoever. That's just life. Pro football, it's any sport, anything that you can be involved in. That type of stuff happens. So who cares? I don't know. Let me go back to on this too. It's kind of funny because Bill Belichick playing or not playing favorites probably cost them winning a Super Bowl. I am sure that there are Patriots fans that are even more spoiled than us Steelers fans. Guaranteed. I mean, they should be. They're used to playing the AFC title game all the time and winning. They came back in the Falcons. What was that? 28-3? They come back and they win a Super Bowl in overtime. It's not the largest deficit, and it's never been done before. Yeah, I'm sure they felt entitled. And you know what, Belichick has Malcolm Butler break an undisclosed team rule. The corner sits. If he plays in that game, maybe they beat the Eagles. But, Bill couldn't get past his very strict rules and set something aside. And I believe that's because, Butler headed to free agency, I believe, in the offseason there. Wanted a new deal. Probably already had some turmoil with the team. There are other guys who have come and gone. I mean, Blount left there and then went back after his tenure with the Steelers and then left again. And there are guys who just say, they didn't have fun playing for Bill Belichick. You got the whole Tom Brady saga that's going on right now. He's up there in age, folks. And you know what? He takes fantastic care of himself. Whatever it is that he drinks, the Fuji waters that most of us can't afford that are $5 a bottle, whatever it is that Tom Brady does, but he's had his spats. How about Rob Gronkowski saying he was contemplating retirement? Because Belichick doesn't give these guys any special treatment. Should he or shouldn't he? I don't know. It's not my place really to say. Can't really say if Bill Cowher did or Chuck Noll did before that. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Okay. Also a different era when you're talking even going back to the 90s with Cowher and the way they used to practice, the privileges those players may have had or may not have had versus those of today. So I kind of want to talk about, I mentioned some other coaches, right? And I talked about current coaches because, this always comes up. People are always talking about Mike Tomlin. They want to compare him to guy. He's got Ben Roethlisberger. Well, you know what? That's valid. You got to have a franchise quarterback to win in the NFL. But at the same time, if you're just not a good coach, I'm looking at you, Jeff Fisher. He had Jared Goff and did what with him during his rookie season? He was out of town, right? As soon as they got out to L.A., then he wasn't doing much of anything with this kid. And I think he had Case Keenum playing. And then you go and you got, I'm trying to think of his name because I'm always joking about it, McVay. And young guy takes over and they end up in the postseason. No, that's not to say that they're going to repeat that success, but it's just goes to show you coaching could go one way or another. Jason Garrett, I don't know what's going on there. Tony Romo, gone. DeMarco Murray, gone. Des Bryant, gone. Jason Witten, retired. He had a core group of players there. They had a window of opportunity to win 13 games. And no Super Bowl aspirations, but it's slow. It sputters. The train starts, stops on the tracks, starts again, stops. Patriots, maybe they're the only team that doesn't. You look at the Saints. They had some woeful seasons there with Sean Payton. Some patience with the ownership there. They have a franchise quarterback with Drew Brees. What did Mike McCarthy and the Packers do without Aaron Rodgers last season? Not a whole lot. Team looked a lot different. Hey, newsflash. Packers haven't won anything since they beat the Steelers in the Super Bowl. What was that, the 2010 season? Does that necessarily mean that Mike McCarthy's a bad coach? I don't know. But you know what? When Mike Tomlin's in that same situation, he has to play Landry Jones or Byron Leftwich or Charlie Batch. They compete. They even win some games they probably shouldn't win. Okay? Just saying. Is that the sign of a good coach? I believe it is. You get dealt the hand that you have. Pete Carroll, he has Russell Wilson. So these arguments are a little invalid, and almost all the time your head coach is going to be tied to your starting quarterback, and you better hope he's a franchise quarterback. Hugh Jackson is betting on that. He's betting the farm. Fortunately, I think he's pulling for the wrong horse out the gate with Tyrod Taylor, but that's another story. What do you think John Harbaugh is considering right now? We talked about this, Brian and I, maybe about a month or two back, with Lamar Jackson coming in there. You think Harbaugh is feeling the pressure to pull the plug on Flacco? Or do you think if he sticks with Flacco, maybe the higher-ups are going to look at that and say, I mean, Ozzie Newsome's on his way out. New GM coming in now. They're going to look at this and say, well, Harbaugh, adios. For better or worse, I would snatch John Harbaugh in a second if he's able and willing as a head coach. I mean, even Andy Reid, for that matter. Andy Reid still hasn't, quite gotten over the hump. But his teams are there. They're well coached. They're always knocking on the door, right? You look at some coaches, but, let me go back to that. Are any of those names guys that you would prefer to have over Mike Tomlin? Everybody would love to have Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and the Patriots' success. But Mike Tomlin, no losing seasons. 100 wins in his first 10 years. There aren't very many guys that have done stuff like that. Like Joe Gibbs, John Madden, Don Shula. There's only a handful of them. Forgot a few of the classic guys. I'm sure Vince Lombardi or somebody like that's in that same category as well. Crazy, though. Mike Tomlin's name's in that category, too. Makes you think for a moment, doesn't it? Well, he had Ben Roethlisberger. Well, not all the time. Been suspended for 4 games here, 1 season, still gets them to a Super Bowl. Interesting, isn't it? 4 games without your star, quarter of a season without your star, and you still get to the dance. Wow. They've had disappointments. I said the Jaguars game, the Tim Tebow pass in overtime. These things happen, man. You don't think the Patriots felt slighted? They have Eli Manning and the Giants. And what, the tipped pass was that David Tyree caught that ball, or a Mario Manningham, and they lose to the Giants in the Super Bowl, not just once. So I just want people to give that a little bit of food for thought, because maybe you don't have as bad as you think you have it. You bring another guy in, and the whole thing could fall apart and tank. I mean, just look at how Todd Haley upset the apple cart for 4 or 5 years. I mean, the stars weren't happy. Now the stars are getting older, and they're even threatening retirement. And they could just easily walk away. They've made their millions. Won't say names because it's speculative. But I had this little bit of a exercise that I did on Twitter around the beginning of the year. And I took a poll, and I was asking everyone, which Super Bowl era Hall of Fame coach has the most Super Bowl victories? Now, of the 4 names I'll list here in a second, 3 of them are the most recent head coaches inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. John Madden, Mark, can't read my own writing here. Marv Levy of the Buffalo Bills, Tony Dungy, Bill Parcells. And a lot of people got Bill Parcells correct. Bill Parcells won twice, went there 3 times, once with the Patriots, lost. That was Brett Favre's lone Super Bowl victory. Think about that. Dan Marino never won one either. I mean, these franchise quarterbacks sometimes still don't Still doesn't get it done. But just the fact that people gave some votes to Marv Levy, he never even won one. 4 years with the Bills that they went straight in a row and never won. And, you know, it's very interesting that Tony Dungy only won one Lombardi trophy. And John Madden only won one Super Bowl. And like I said, Marv Levy hadn't won one at all. So Mike Tomlin shares something in common with all of these Hall of Fame coaches. I mean, so does Bill Cowher, too. I don't quite understand maybe Bill Cowher or Dan Reeves, and there's a few coaches that may be left out of the Hall of Fame. So I don't want people to think necessarily that just because Tomlin has a Super Bowl victory under his belt, that he's immediately going to be catapulted into having a bust in Canton. That don't put words in my mouth. Not what I'm saying just yet. There are lots of other deserving coaches, a handful of them at least, that should be there. I'm sure Belichick, as soon as he calls it quits, is definitely jumps to the front of the line. So you got to look at some of this and just think to yourself, I mean, you look at win percentages. I mean, I don't think that Tomlin necessarily gets his due credit. You see some of the guys that he's won with, he loses star players. The Cowboys lose Ezekiel Elliott, the whole thing goes in the toilet. They lose Tony Romo, the whole thing goes in the toilet. You know, Tomlin puts D'Angelo Williams back there. I mentioned this with the Le'Veon Bell stuff. Jordan Todman and Fitzgerald Toussaint. And they nearly get in the AFC title game. And no Antonio Brown when they play the Broncos in Denver. Martavis Bryant, gone for a whole year, right? Still make do without these star players. Doesn't always work that way. But I don't know. To me, Mike Tomlin is the same type of coach that like John Madden was. Because, you know, Madden, his Raiders, always had to deal with Chuck Noll and the Steelers. Chuck Noll and the Steelers are akin to Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots right now. Dynasty, victories, and just so happens that our guys can't get over the hump in the same way that Madden couldn't. One Super Bowl. You know, we all complain about Jesse Cauditt. Why do you think John Madden won't even talk about Franco Harris in the Immaculate Reception to this day? So I kind of find it funny. I mean, you look at like win percentages and things of that nature, and Tomlin actually has a higher win percentage than several of these Hall of Fame coaches. And I mean, that could go down. If he coaches another 10 years, he doesn't have Ben Roethlisberger. Let's say Mason Rudolph isn't the guy, or Josh Dobbs isn't the guy, and we know Landry Jones isn't the guy. And I still think Mike Tomlin finds a way to compete. You even look within the division. Yeah, you're going to say, well, the AFC North isn't too hot. But for a few years there, it was really red hot. Ravens won a Super Bowl, and the Bengals went to like 4 or 5 straight postseason appearances, or it was always 2 or 3 AFC North teams in the mix. In the AFC, only 6 teams get in. 2 or 3 of them, pretty good percentages, right? Can't say the same thing when you look at like the AFC East. Buffalo Bills. The one year Tom Brady goes down, they actually have a winning record with Matt Castle, but the New York Jets, coached by Rex Ryan and led by Mark Sanchez, get to the AFC title game. There's some food for thought too. So there's disappointments everywhere. I think when you look at your benchmark when it comes to, I think the NFL just has so much parity. To be completely honest, when you compare to anything else, I mean, baseball has almost always got the same teams up top. The NBA definitely does. That doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon either. Hockey, you get some trade-off here or there. I mean, it's good to be king, but you get several people who get to be king year after year after year. When you have one that does it, then all of a sudden it's like this bar is just raised. Well, it's out of reach. I'm sorry. You have a coach that obtained 100 wins faster than anybody else. He did not have Cowher's team. Take a look at okay, he had Ben. He had Polamalu. That helps. He didn't have Bettis. He had Willie Parker, Weldy Moore. I just talked about that the other day too. They got rid of Santonio Holmes at one point. Santonio Holmes was a rookie barely playing with Bill Cowher anyway. They've repeatedly, I mean, how many wide receiver groups are we past even Santonio Holmes for that matter? How many linebackers are we past? You know, Lamar Woodley, Harrison, come and gone. You had Jason World somewhere in there. You remember guys like Rashard Mendenhall or Mike Wallace. I mentioned Emmanuel Sanders. There was the James Ferriers of the world, but then they left and there was Larry Foote. I mean, there was major roster turnover. So this is something like Mike Tomlin deals with every single year and somehow still remains competitive, still hasn't had a losing season, a couple 8-8 kiss your sister draws there, and nearly make the playoffs in it too, the one season, which is just incredible. I'm not the kind of guy to call Mike Tomlin a failure. You want to say the obvious and say, okay, Bill Belichick's a better coach. By all means, you have the right to say so. There's nothing wrong with that. I agree with that. But then when you look behind Bill Belichick, who is there? I forgot what I was reading. It might have been Ron Cook's article in the PG about this. I think it was Doug Peterson, but I'm trying to remember who rated it. I can't remember if it was like USA Today or Sports Illustrated or something. They had Doug Peterson ranked second and Tomlin third among the NFL coaches. I mean, Peterson, what has he done? Okay, he won a Super Bowl. Did it quickly. Had Carson Wentz, maybe franchise quarterback, through most of that season before he got hurt and still did it with the backup guy. I think that's a pretty good coaching job. But I get to see it done for a long period of time. I look around the rest of the NFL and I say to myself, there isn't anybody else I'd rather have. There isn't anyone else I would rather have. Maybe if Cowher wanted to come out of retirement from being an analyst or talking head on TV and be the head coach again, that would be interesting. I'd be interested to see if he could still do it. Joe Gibbs tried to do that. Had a little success and didn't turn out so well after that. Like a lot of mitigating factors again. So just some food for thought. Hope you enjoyed my rant. Hope you're as annoyed with all of this stuff as I am. I cannot wait for the players to report and get excited to talk about things that may not even materialize in the regular season, but they're still exciting to talk about. You know, Mike Hilton materialized last year. He was the camp darling. I remember we were all thinking Nile Davis was looking pretty sharp, but as that went on, it wasn't looking as sharp as that Fitz Toussaint, who dropped some weight, was competing. Justin Hunter was catching like everything because Juju was a little banged up at the beginning of camp and Martavis Bryant wasn't cleared to practice. He was still under the like quasi-suspension stuff. We're going to have all kinds of fun things like this to talk about that probably won't amount to a hill of beans, but they'll still be fun to talk about because it means football is right around the corner. So thanks for listening, folks. Look forward to, well, seeing your comments and responding to them. Until next time, be safe, be good. I'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.